You ever wondered how you can get a little bit bigger? You want those muscles filling out your sleeves. You want to get a little bit thicker across your chest. You want your back to fill out so you got those wings as you're walking through the imaginary briefcase syndrome. Is that you? Then you need to stay tuned to the rest of this video. What's up, everybody? I'm Dane from Garage Strength, and I'm gonna go into some deep detail that's gonna help you get a little bit bigger inside of training specifically. And we're gonna start with muscular hypertrophy, specifically sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, okay? So the big key is there's always, everything that we're doing in the weight room is going to be based around some semblance of hypertrophy. One of the common misconceptions is that there's hypertrophic range and then there's the strength range. And people forget that even when we're working in strength ranges, there's still hypertrophy going on. There's myofibrillar hypertrophy. That is linked down below. You can follow a blog and a video that dives deep into what myofibrillar hypertrophy is. But for today, we're gonna go into sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. So if we can think about a muscle cell, okay? So we got this, the cell, we got the cross-sectional view, we've got myofibers here, right? Myofibers. Okay, that's a normal muscle cell, okay? So let's take that exact same cell and let's pretend that this muscle cell underwent a set of 17 bench presses. What does that cell now look like? Ideally, that cell will be much larger in size, okay? So what ends up happening is that when we're going under reps of 8 reps to 20, that's gonna be the range, that swole range that we're all looking for, and that increase in size is what causes that is extracellular water or sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. So while we're going through that 8 to 20 rep range, we're bringing in a whole bunch of extracellular water, and that's coming from the usage of anaerobic glycolysis, okay? And the reason why I'm telling you this is because if we can think about the anaerobic alactic system is what we're typically going to be using, and this is what you'll learn in the myofibrillar video, myofibrillar hypertrophy. During sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, we're going to be working more in that anaerobic glycolysis energy system. And so what ends up occurring is our body is going to be using glycogen to increase and to create ATP and to fuel our muscular contractions and to lead to, you know, our ability to execute that 17 rep bench press. And so what ends up happening through all this is that anaerobic glycolysis is used under more metabolic stress. So that 8 to 20 rep range causes this metabolic stress. And when we have this metabolic stress, we have an increase in lactate, we've got an increase in hydrogen, and we've got an increase in glycogen. And then that increase in glycogen, because 1 gram of glycogen attracts 3 grams of water, now all of a sudden we've got extra cellular water tracking into the muscle cell, which leads to that expansion and leads ultimately to a larger muscle cell over time. So this is pretty important, and some of the things that we tend to forget is that genetics plays a decent role in all of this. Sometimes size does have to do with your genetic makeup and your genetic capability. And if we can think about, most bodybuilders are going to be working in those 8 to 20 rep ranges. They want to increase muscle size. But there's a couple different tricks here that people are forgetting, that sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, the sarcoplasmic rep range here, this rep range, that 8 to 20 rep range, can still increase strength. And if we can understand, there's a protein channel known as aquaporin 4. Okay, so aquaporin 4 is a protein channel that brings water inside of the cell. Okay, so as that muscle is stimulated, it brings water inside the cell, and it lives. The protein is predominantly found in fast twitch muscle fibers, almost entirely found in fast twitch muscle fibers. So this is why we see bodybuilders like Jay Cutler, who was a tremendous athlete, Mike O'Hearn, who's an All-American football player. These guys are freak athletes, and they also have that genetic makeup, and I'm sure they're assisted by some chemicals as well, and pharmaceuticals, but they also have a genetic makeup to grow quite a bit larger because they are more fast twitch. They can then have aquaporin 4, the protein channels that will bring in more water into the cell, which will then stimulate the size and the growth of that specific cell. So one thing that we've also got to remember is that, you know, if we can think about Ronnie Coleman, he was an absolute animal who was always working in very high intensity ranges and also in that 8 to 20 rep range, because there is some backing that when you're stimulating fast twitch muscle growth in that high intensity rep range, the triples, the doubles, you can also, in theory, increase your muscular strength in that 8 to 20 rep range, even though they're completely different rep ranges. But going back to that aquaporin 4, now all of a sudden we can comprehend that there might be methods and physiological means for our body to adapt to sarcoplasmic hypertrophy by stimulating satellite cells. So if we can think about satellite cells here, I always forget if there's 2 L's or 1. I think there's only 1. Okay, so satellite cells, when we do this 8 to the 17 reps on bench press, and we bring in, we start to see an increase in glycogen in the cell, and we're starting to see more water pulled into the cell because we're working in the anaerobic glycolysis energy system now, and we're using glycogen to stimulate for our muscular contractions. The water starts to come in, we start to expand, and now, so this is the water here is known as sarcoplasm, and that cell membrane here starts to be compromised a little bit. It starts to get stretched. And what we're starting to see with research regarding satellite cells is that when this water comes in and when we're working in this anaerobic glycolysis system, we're starting to see that not only are satellite cells being donated, the myonuclei, the mRNA from satellite cells are actually getting donated, and that sarcoplasmic hypertrophy is actually can stimulate myofibrillar growth. It can protect the cell membrane. So we're donating the myonuclei from the satellite cells. So it's actually increasing strength under the sarcoplasmic rep range. But we're also starting to see in science that satellite cells are part of the actual communication factor. The satellite cells can see what's going on from a physiological perspective, and they're part of that defense mechanism to protect this cell from being injured. And so that the satellite cells are now communicating, they're starting to protect the cell membrane, and they're donating the mRNA, the myonuclei, to create more myofibers. So this is muscular hypertrophy. This is a crash course on sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, and ultimately what it comes down to is the increase in the muscle cell is caused by doing 8 to 20 reps. It's caused by metabolic stress. Now all of a sudden we start using glycogen as our main energy source to stimulate the development of 2-ATP. And now that glycogen that is inside of this cell draws in more water because of that metabolic stress that's going on. It starts to expand the cell, and then potentially, depending upon how many sets we're doing, now we start to see some satellite cells donate to that specific cell that is undergoing sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. So this is a crash course on muscular growth, the physiology behind it. If you're interested in a little bit more, click on the link down below. You can see a full in-depth blog behind sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, myofibrillar hypertrophy, and what exercises are best to induce this massive muscular growth.